Be dreaming about these later, I think. Nightmaring.
There's a song for that. So I guess I'm vice chair, right?
Well,
Does that, I mean, still, is that,
Yes,
so does that mean I call us to order?
you can
Actually-
actually order and then we can rearrange things depending on how you all like.
And what's the specific wording for that? I'd like to call us to order. Thanks.
all right. And the time is
You couldn't help yourself.
6:11.
We do
The Pledge of
Pledge
Allegiance.
allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
First, we have to do the roll call.
Oh, good. How about instead, shall we take roll call?
Absolutely. Committee Member Joe Siciliano,
Obviously here.
Committee Member Brian Zadowski is absent. Yes. Committee Member Karen Plant,
Here.
Committee Member Robert Austin,
Here.
Committee Member Sarah Palmer,
Here.
Town Manager Amalia is not here at the moment. Town Clerk Assistant Sammy Brown is present. Committee Staff Liaison Jeff Kirch, Project Coordinator,
I'm here.
Karen Young Gardner, Community Standards Director.
Here.
Alrighty, Madam Chair, we have a quorum. No,
Oh, that's excellent. Now should we approve the minutes?
there's no minutes to approve, just the agenda.
Okay, no, oh. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve it.
Second.
Any discussion? Take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion do I say that or do you?
You can, it's okay.
Motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Now we're on the first agenda item, swearing in of newly appointed Unified Land Development Code Review Committee members. In front of you, you have your oaths of office. And if you could stand up and raise is it your right hand and repeat after me?
All of us, or one at a time.
All of you.
Well, Jill's actually, she's already on. She's not new.
I thought we were.
I think it was
re-swearing in
old.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was told, but that's okay. Alrighty. So it would just be the new committee members and the ones who are reassigned to a different council member. I, your name, do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support,
or affirm that I will support,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and government of the United States
and government of the United States
and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
that I am duly qualified to hold office
that I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of the state of Florida
to the Constitution of the state of Florida
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
and that I will well and faithfully
well and faithfully
perform the duties of committee member upon which I'm about to enter.
perform the duties of committee member upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. And if you could just add your name and sign those
Okay.
and give those back to me, that'd be great.
What is? Oh, sure. Want to borrow my pen?
14.
Sign. Okay. Sign. For printing.
Print it there, but
You print your name at the top where the big dash is after I, and then sign your name at the bottom. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's working. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Madam Chair, item number 2. For now, on to item number 2.
So the selection of the Unified Land Development Code Review Committee Chairperson is up next. Do we have any
Nomination.
nominations?
I nominate Jen.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, looks like I'm the chairperson. That passes 3-1. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's gonna be interesting, I assure you. Okay, item number 3. Shall I move on or do I need to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Is the selection of the Land Code ULDC Committee Vice Chair. Any nominations?
Karen?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously.
She's been doing this longer than
Aye. Okay, so I guess now we jump into the meat of it, which is the discussion and review of sign code. I'm gonna sort of move this off to staff to figure out where we want to jump in. I mean, it's just, there's so many papers here.
Yeah.
What is your,
Let's walk through.
Yeah.
All the paperwork that you have. You were given an agenda packet that I think went out last Tuesday, Wednesday kind of time period. And in that agenda, there was a memorandum, a cover memorandum, and it included a letter from our town attorney. And it also included a draft of their newly proposed sign code and also a sign code that they had given us back in June of 2024.
so I'm sorry, really quickly, can you just tell us where you're starting from so we can all be on the same page number or page, or you're not
I
yet?
will. I just want to
Okay,
make,
okay.
I just want to make sure we have all the paperwork first.
Gotcha.
And everybody knows what I'm talking about. So that was in the original agenda package. Then you got a supplement,
Which is this?
which was sent out to you by email on Friday. And I think at least one of you came in and picked up a copy on Friday. And that was basically a very short cover memorandum and a matrix
Yeah.
that we have here. That matrix describes the current sign code. And Karen will go over that with you in a little while. And then today at your packages, at your places rather, you got a package of 164 pages of pictures of signs that we will go over. It's basically a drive-through town that I'll go over with you. And we'll get a chance to talk about the kind of signs that actually exist right here in town. And then we have this copy that Karen provided us, which is from the Jupiter Code. And then I think you also got copies of pictures that Joe had taken today. And Sammy, you didn't get us copies, but when we get to that, we'll do that. But I think you have those copies. That's the paperwork that I believe you have in front of you. Okay? Now, as to where we're going to start.
Those are the additional copies, Jeff.
Yeah.
And they also have the comp plan and the comp plan amendment.
Yes, and then and there's the comp plan and I think it's the ear that was sent out. So where we're going to start is we're gonna start with a very brief introduction of what you got on last Tuesday, Wednesday, which was the attorney's drafts. The draft that is marked up and has lines crossed out is the June draft. And that's important because that was a draft that amended the current code. So what I want you to realize is that the current code actually exists within this document because the sections that were crossed out or not underlined is the existing code. The stuff that's underlined was the draft revision that they did at that point in time. What the other document that is labeled draft only and has blue on top of it, that is the draft that they provided us on April 4th. Now, what that draft is it is a repeal of the previous code and the introduction of a new code. There's a lot of similarities between what they have, but this draft that they gave us is a constitutional framework for adopting a code, but there wasn't a lot of meat on the bones as to how many signs, what kind of signs, all those kind of things. It was kind of bare bones on that approach. So just wanted to let you know that there's a significant amendment that we will have to do. What we're trying to get to is getting away from a content based sign code to a structurally based sign code. And what I mean by that is we're going to get to language that talks about the type of structure that the sign is on or attached to. For example, we will use language like freestanding sign, which means it sits alone. We will use language like window sign, which means it's in a window. We will use language like wall sign, which means it's on the wall. We will continue to have definitions of roof sign, which, as proposed, will be prohibited. But it's going to be that kind of language. And I'll give you an example that we are going through, and it's not quite in this draft, but we're going to try to get away from language like menu board. And a menu board is when you drive up to Wendy's or Culver's and you get in there and you go, okay, there's the menu. This is what I'm going to order from, especially if you're an older person like me and you didn't use the app because God knows, where that thing is or how I'm going to read that little menu on here. I want my selections on the menu board, but we're not going to call it a menu board. We're going to call it a freestanding, changeable copy drive-through sign.
Right.
So no real mention of content, talks about location, drive-through, the fact that it's freestanding, and that we're able to change the copy because they can raise the prices. And every once in a while they might go, oh, we've got a 2-for-1, Jeff. So Jeff's going to take that deal every time because rather than having one sandwich for $6, if I can have 2 for 10, I'm a budget conscious man. And I'll go, yes, that's the meal. And by the way, now that I'm having 2 sandwiches, I need a large order of fries and a big milkshake to wash that down. Anyway, the other thing that we're going to talk about is temporary signs. So instead of calling them political signs or real estate signs or garage sale signs, they're going to fall within this temporary sign category. Now, in here, as we're discussing things, I'm going to fall back and I'm going to call them garage sale signs or grand opening signs, so that you have an idea of what we are talking about. Most of those kind of signs are going to fall within the temporary sign classification. So that's my brief introduction as to where we are. What we're going to do at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Karen for a little while. And she's going to explain that matrix that came out to you on Friday. Remember that the matrix is not of the proposed signage, because we didn't think there was enough meat on that. But we're going to start off with where we are right now. And she's going to take you there. When she's done, I'm going to take you through a little drive around town that we went through. And there's not to be any judgment. I'm going to try my best not to have judgment on these signs, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. We're not going to, it's not a code enforcement case. We're not going to worry about whether they are compliant, non-compliant with the code. It's more a chance for you as the committee to look at the signs, because what we're really after here, even though it's her title, community standards, but you guys are the beginning of that decision as to what our community standards are, what makes sense for this particular community, because our sign code should not look like West Palm Beach's sign code. Completely different community. We have large lots, they have large buildings. Anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, unless you have questions for me at this time.
Snuck. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. Karen Gardner-Young. Been with the town for about a week and a half, I think. So I have been in the field for over 30 years. As stated, it's the Community Standards Director, which basically I'm managing code enforcement, planning and zoning, and assisting with building. So like anything you touch the property, I'm pretty much involved with. So honestly, I love this stuff. But I do want to tell you, this is the third sign code modifications that I've done in about 3 years. They are overwhelming. Okay, so I want you really to take a deep breath, because Jeff and I are going to get you through this, and we're going to do it in small bites. Okay, so it doesn't get that overwhelming, because the one thing that a couple of observations when I've done sign code, and I was talking to Karen, diagrams and charts are better than text, right? It's more you can see. And that's why I'm recommending doing a chart, because it's meant to be user friendly, right? We don't want someone to have to come in and say, I don't know what I need to do. Well, if you have a chart that tells you exactly what you need to do, it makes it nice and easy. But the definitions of sign, as Jeff will go through a little bit in his presentation, can differ from location to location, because that really matters on what the community wants and doesn't want. So that also requires us to make sure we understand. The way I see this coming is, Jeff did talk about some of the language. We have some legal language we need to put into place. I will tell you, signs are very legal. If somebody's going to sue, that chances are this is a good place they're going to sue. And there's already been a bunch of lawsuits that have already been in existence, which is why we're going out of content base and more to a non-content base, because that's kind of what the law says. So you'll see a lot of the verbiage at the beginning that's, blah, 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 but the legals, the attorneys have to put it in. So I wanted you to really take a look at the chart and go through that, because that's the meat and bones to this. Jeff and I can figure out how to get to where you want to be, but we need to understand where you want to be. Okay, and then we'll go into the legal questions and into the other texts, such as, what's a prohibited sign? What's an exempt sign? We'll get into that later. I want us to concentrate kind of on what signs we have. Now, the one thing to keep in mind, which we always have to do when we're amending sign codes, whenever you change whatever's in existence, you now impact existing signs. So keep that in mind, is that if we're making a sign area smaller, we now have signs that are out there that could become non-compliant. And I'm not telling you not to do it, but I just want you to understand either way. We could allow them and make it larger or smaller. This is one of those instances that you don't have a blank slate. We already have signs that are out there. And so when Jeff goes through it, he's gonna ask you, you know, do you like these? Don't you like these? And again, very different from a built-out environment and non-rural, which this is. And we have businesses both in residential and in commercial, right? So we've got to be able to figure those out as well. So I'm gonna start off with my chart, which I tried the best. Again, as stated, this is what we presently have. So you will always have in your hands where we're starting. So I use this as the base.
Yeah, just for a frame of reference, what we popped up there was our current zoning map, and all the good stuff is covered up by so if you could raise it up a little bit there, you'll see that our current zoning, keep on going a little bit, is there. That's good. Everything is green, which is basically AR. And then you've got the blue, which is in a couple places. That is the schools, that's the elementary school, and that's the park. And so then those other colored areas that you see, they are basically our current commercial areas. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Karen, but that gives you a sense of when she talks about the requirements in the AR district, that's everything in green. When she talks about the commercial areas, basically our commercial areas are the same when it comes to sign code. Just wanted to give you.
Could I just really quickly before we
Go.
jump into this, right off the bat with the matrix, my confusion, even after having lived here, is because of what we just went over. Ag res is one giant place, but maybe as far as the matrix goes, it should be a bona fide ag and then ag res, because those people are certainly allowed to have signs, as it says later on. Because if this is going to be like a user friendly type of thing, then an ag res person is going to be not permitted the same signage as a bona fide ag person in the ag res zone.
That goes to farm signs.
Yeah, we'll deal with farm signs differently as being exempt.
Because, yeah, they're exempt from our code.
Right.
But we'll.
But you get what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly
Yes,
what you're
and
saying.
when we get to the drive around, we will see that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we get it. So what I did is on the top, you can see those are the existing zoning districts. So we have one residential, we have two commercial, you have institutional or public facilities. So that would be government, schools, churches typically. And then you have parks and recreation, which speaks for itself, usually grand, and then conservation. You know, conservation generally is property that's not built up, doesn't have playgrounds, doesn't have courts. Usually it's, passive. You might have a walkway. I put a column on the end, which is the southern quarter. Those might be aware, hopefully, that we are starting right now in a discussion regarding the Southern Boulevard corridor. Those properties that are south of the canal going down towards Southern. We're working with those property owners, whether residential, commercial, or in between, to figure out kind of what they want. We kind of feel that's a different kind of feel than from the rest of the town. So I put it because there's no regulations for it, but at some point we're thinking of putting in there based upon our communications with those groups. So that's why you see that column as empty, okay? So you will see I characterized into three basic areas. Wall mounted, like Jeff said, anything attached to an item. Could be an awning, could be a canopy, could be a wall, anything that's somehow attached. That's wall mounted. Okay, then you have freestanding, which is basically, again, out on its own. It could be on post, it could be a monument sign, anything that's not attached is by itself. And then the third category is temporary, what we're going to call, which like Jeff said, your garage sales, your open houses, your political signs, your special events, your grand openings. Those are all under that general topic. Okay, and those are all the green. So you have wall mounted on the first page is green. Got it? And then you go to page. The next one is go 4 pages later, and you'll see the freestandings in green. And then you go to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, I put interior, which we'll talk about. So those are typically signs that you don't see from the right of way. So it could be in a courtyard, or it could be if you've ever seen what we call directory signs that, you know, you're walking down, it's a shopping center, you're walking down, they have a sign that says, you know, this way or this way is where the shop is located, but it's not out on the roadway. And then you have the last category, which I said was the temporary announcement, which is the next sign. So we did the broad categories, and then within each one, I did kind of specific. All right, we good? Okay, then under each one, we look at general things, which is again, what I need you to really kind of concentrate on, which is the number of signs allowed. Okay, you can have 0 prohibited to as many as you want. You can base it, this is a lot of places are different. Wall signs are typically based on the store frontage. So how big the store frontage is determines on how big your sign is. So that puts it in, you know, comparison, because you don't want to have a storefront that's 100 square feet, and your sign 100 square feet, right? So that's why you kind of limit it based upon that. Freestanding signs can be done usually on the property, how long the property is. So there are different ways, again, of categorizing it, but generally that's how you determine the number or the size generally, okay? Sign area is, Jeff will go over, there's different definitions. I'm gonna make it very simple. How much the sign takes of the area. And that would include a logo, their name, any design they have. That would generally be the size of the sign. Okay. Then you do location. Is it allowed to be should it be by the median? If it's a freestanding sign, should it be by the front door? If it's if it's an address or something like that, can you allow, is it allowed on an awning as well as on the building? So location could vary depending on where you want it. You have lettering. Yes, believe it or not, they do regulate the size of the lettering. So it could be a 1/4 inch, it could be 2.5 inches, it could be 5 feet, whatever you want it to be. They look at the lettering. Height and width of the sign sometimes. So how tall it can be, how long it can be. Setbacks is typically on freestanding. How far back is it from the road right of way? And that is very controversial. Sometimes you want it closer. If you're something like on Southern Boulevard where the speed limit is very fast, so they don't have the ability to see something if it's all the way back. But then do you want so much sign clutter, we call it, on the roadway? So that's something that, again, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these. And then we always put the miscellaneous, which kind of gets to Joe's point. Is there something specific we need to say about that particular district that we feel is necessary to put in there so they're aware of that? So that's kind of how I did the categories. So does that, I mean, that's the general. I didn't want to make it too complicated, not that I don't think you can handle it, but again, I'm always looking at it from a person who owns a business for the first time and they've never done this before. How do they get, how do they deal with it more so than like a sign company who's probably read about 10 or million of these and kind of knows what's going on?
Right. So just another quick question
No?
is, and I'm guessing that you did this off of existing code, right? Because I'm not sure that canopy signs or awning signs are going to be relevant in that if the Rural Vista guidelines passes into code, gets codified, we will be having porches and there won't be an awning on a porch. So I don't know where an awning, do we have one in town? I don't think we do.
Doesn't the,
I'm not sure that we have an actual awning sign.
Mhm.
We have, I think we've got some canopy signs in here, but
yeah.
we'll go through
Okay,
that.
And again, we have to look at not only what's in the future, but we
right.
need to also look what's there now, because if we don't include it, typically the code means it's prohibited and the person would have to take it down. And Joe, the point you brought up is exactly why Jeff is going to go through some of these pictures.
Okay,
Because you live in the community, right?
Mhm.
You have a much better feel for what works and what doesn't work. I'm going to put it that way. And so, we're trying to catch everything we can. And again, I'm always going to tell everybody, codes are a work in progress,
sure.
right? I will tell you, even when you do such a substantial change like this and you go to implement it, you're always gonna find there's something we forgot. And
Right.
we're gonna have to come back and fill it in. So, again, I want really you to be on that, get to me, like Jeff said, the nuts and the bolts. And the meat on the bone, however you want to put it. So that way we have a good feel, on what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Okay? Jeff, I don't know, did you want to go through this or have them kind of, because this is kind of what the code is. And I think maybe the discussion will come out with your pictures. Are you guys good with that? I mean, I can go through it, but, again, from the general perspective, I think pictures would help you a lot better than me kind of going through this, but.
Yeah,
And the other thing that I'm sorry, Jeff, the other thing that I want you to be aware, particularly on multi-tenant buildings. The major instrument that's going to govern that is typically going to be a master sign plan,
Mhm.
right? Because you typically want, a conformity of some sort within that particular, area, whether that's multiple tenants. Some of them, if you have multiple signs, like I've been in other jurisdictions where you have a bank that has directory signs, wall signs, a monument sign. Sometimes you even require master sign plan, particularly for that instance. So everything is kind of brought to you at once. Because the worst thing is you do it piecemeal, right? And then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that building was blue and the sign is tan. And it's like, how did that happen? So, we'll kind of figure out that. And I just want you to be aware, we really haven't been able to implement that. So I just want you to know that's another thing that's going to come with that text that we're going to bring forward. So just kind of keep that in mind, that this is kind of guidance. This is at least the minimum or the maximum, however you want to look at it, that we really want. And again, no right or wrong answer. Everybody has a different way of looking at things, and some people prohibit things and others think it's the best thing since sliced bread. So if you can look at that and maybe mark it up for me or just, make some notes and say, oh, this is okay, or this one's not okay, or I like a little different. Because like I said, Jeff and I can get you there. Now, the blues that I put in, I couldn't give this to you in good conscience without putting the blue ones in, which is when you have a canopy sign, typically, hangs down. You have to have a clearance. I mean, somebody has to be able to go underneath it, and we didn't have a clearance. So I didn't want, I wanted to give you at least something to consider. So, I just kind of put 9 feet in because I figured, I'm vertically challenged and I can make it under 6, but somebody like Jeff is taller than me. So I just want to make it. And the same thing when you have window signs, you should talk about illumination. Do we want them to be highlighted with lighting or not with lighting? So I just wanted that this was actually language proposed by our attorneys that, we just wanted to make sure we put those in there. It kind of made a little bit of sense. So you'll see that even in this, there are some things, but this is only a draft. This is not the be all. This again is the base. Okay?
Yeah.
Good? Okay.
A lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot.
But I just have another quick question on the interior signs in green. It says, so number, and then somewhere along the line, we start talking about secondary signs. And then there's now the driveway sign, which would be a tertiary sign. So, right, we're like moving up the numbers.
So
Is
that's a monument sign. So that's freestanding.
uh,
Because it's page 5. And so usually you have, you can have secondary signs for 2 reasons. You might have multiple ingress egress
mhm.
driveways.
Okay, so
Uh,
this sign, I'm sorry, this sign isn't necessarily saying target,
No, it
right?
doesn't have to
Okay,
say it.
that's,
It could be.
it's something else within the development.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Sometimes you could have Walgreens in the front and on the side it could say pharmacy.
Mhm.
So usually you have 2 signs, particularly, this is freestanding, but like even on building signs, you usually have 2 signs if they're on a corner. Because you want it on both streets, because you want people to know where to go, right? So but typically on freestanding, you're allowed secondary sign. A lot of it also is dependent on the size of the parcel,
Well,
right? I mean, I've had some
Let's hope so.
jurisdictions where I put like, temporary signs. If you've got 5 acres, you can have more signs than you could if it's only 1 acre, because it doesn't impact as much when you have them scrunched together in a small lot than on a larger lot.
Okay.
So some of these things, we can talk about and determine, is that something, again, you want, you don't want, and then Jeff and I, this is not gonna be, in my mind, an overnight. And again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed, and you need to let me and Jeff know, hey, guys, I'm overloaded, my wife's gonna kill me, my husband's gonna kill me if I come back and talk about signs anymore. But, kind of let us know, because, we're on, I tell everybody, I come from New York, I know no speed but fast. I drive fast, I talk fast, and I walk fast. So, you just need to, calm us down and let us know that, we want to get there, because again, the sooner we get there, the sooner we can implement exactly what you want. And, there's a lot out there that Jeff and I have kind of looked at and go, what? So we want to make sure that everybody is in compliance with what the community wants, not what the sign code says today, but what you feel. Because again, a code changes over time. What was acceptable 20 years ago may be acceptable now, and vice versa. We didn't have certain signs then that we have now. I mean, changeable copy signs weren't even in existence 40 years ago. So, we need to start working and talking about those things, and what you feel is important and what you don't. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. And don't hesitate. Look, I won't talk for Jeff. We're not here on a formal basis. If you've got a question, just come on, let us know. We'll take it down. We'll address it. So don't feel bad, please. And there's no dumb question, trust me. What you're thinking is probably what somebody else is also thinking. So please, we need your input. We need your comments.
Well, you got the bait and tackle down there that it's full of all those signs. I had the light up sign that basically looks pretty tacky and ugly, but they've been there for 30 years. I mean, are they kind of grandfathered in or what?
Well, that's another conversation that,
Yeah,
we're
that's
gonna have to have,
one.
you don't, if you are illegal, you remain illegal. But, is that something that we want to amend or grandfather in or whatever? There are ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish. But, Robert, there may be others who think it's tacky and don't want it, even though they've had it for 20 years. Signs particularly, although we do have them internal, but signs are typically the entranceway to the town, and what is it we want to reflect when people come in, right? That's,
So maybe the language could be, if a sign is in disrepair and you're now non-conforming for whatever reason, when it falls apart, then you have to put one up that's to code, right?
yeah,
Yes, I think when we go through this, you'll see that maintenance is an issue.
yes.
I think that we will talk about amortization of signs, not tonight, but at some
down the
point in
road.
time.
Okay.
And obviously, if you have a sticker on a window, that can be amortized over a much shorter time period than, a big, beautiful monument sign that you just put in.
Mhm.
So those are things that we're going to have to discuss. I may regret this, but I actually think that we should meet more often when we're going through this, because I know for myself, when I am not in sign code mode, I drive along the roadways and I'm like, I don't even really notice signs. I don't pay attention to them. I know it all. It's all background and don't notice anything. Then you start dealing with sign codes and I start looking around. And as some of you know, I live up in Stewart, and the entire ride home, and when I'm getting in town, I'm looking and like, oh, that sign, you start making observations, you start noticing signs. I don't want to prolong that for you any more than you have to. And I think there's gonna be homework for you all. And it's not necessarily written homework or anything like that. It's actually going out and observing. Because one of the things about signs is it depends on the location of the sign. For example, and I'll just do this real quickly, real estate sign, typical real estate sign is, I think, 18 inches by 2 feet, 3 square feet. One real estate sign on a 1/4 acre lot, that's perfectly appropriate. You drive by, you see that it's out here. On our properties in this town that are 5 acres, and a 5 acre parcel is typically 330 feet by 660 feet. 3 square feet? Is it appropriate? Is it sufficient? We'll go through that. I'm not asking for a determination at this point in time. It's those kind of observations that I want you to take a look at, and get a real feel for. First thing I want to do is, if you go to page 24 of the initial packet, your actual agenda, and we go to the definitional section there.
24 in the gray box.
24 in the gray box, 11 of 25 on the draft only copy. And what I'm gonna do is I'll read it out loud. You guys can read along silently, because this is the definition of a sign. And I'm gonna start by saying a rather than any, or as it is in our existing code, every. So I'm gonna say a. A sign is a device, frame, letter, figure, graphic, character, mark, permanently affixed object, ornamentation, plane, point, design, picture, logo, stroke, stripe, symbol, trademark, reading matter, or other representation for visual communication that is used to announce the purpose of or identity of the person or entity, or to try to communicate information to the public. That covers a whole lot of things. And one of the questions we're going to be asking you is, do you want it to cover things like art? That in this context is a sign, but do you want to cover that? This is, it depends on the jurisdiction that you're in. There are some things like bench signs and murals and those kind of things. Do we want to regulate them in this sign code? But I just wanted to make you aware that a definition of a sign, as it's put here, is very, very broad. So with that, I'd like you to look at this page 1 of 164, and for the folks that are in rapt attention at home, Sammy, if you could follow along, I will try to tell you which page I am looking at and put it up on the big screen. What we have here on page 1 are signs, and they are little temporary signs. If you can expand that, that'd be great. If not, it shows up obviously much better on the handouts that we've given. Now, these are temporary signs. They're actually located on the property, not on the right of way. They're close to it. And I'm going to talk about a lot of these signs from a context rather than a structural perspective. Because what that first sign is, Serenity Grove Dental, that's a directional sign. And what the back one is, and you see the directional sign on page 2, and then you'll see the sign there now opening. That's a grand opening sign. Okay. And I saw those things and I said, well, and then you also have Palm Beach Pediatrics, a directional sign to Palm Beach Pediatrics. And this is a shot taken from the right of way. And these two signs, once again, the Palm Beach Pediatric signs and the grand opening for the dentist sign, are closer to the building. And I went out and I thought, oh, well, I know what the problem is here, because we're now up to page 6. I know it's probably hard for you you could catch up, Sammy. I'm not doing a good job of telling you what page I'm on. Keep on going. There's 6.
Yep.
Okay. On page 6, I said, I know what the problem is here. Look at that monument sign. They just got this little monument sign out in front of their building on Southern. And that's one of the reasons that people have to go to these little temporary signs to let them know where they are and what they're opening.
Well, what the
And-
question I have is, was this monument sign what was in their original plan because it was to code, or was this what they just decided to put? Because that's kind of a ridiculous place for it, number one. Number two, it's also,
We're not gonna get into the approvals or whether they violate code right
no,
now.
I'm not asking whether they violated. What I'm asking is, did they make it as big as they could? Did they put it in the best place they could?
Wow.
Because all of this looks like it might have been a bit of a shortcoming to, especially given that this is Southern Boulevard doing
Well,
60
let-
miles an hour.
Let me tell you what I learned on Friday. Because on Friday afternoon, I talked to a person who's much wiser than I am and knows this community a lot better than I do. And she's sitting up there, and I'm gonna steal her thunder. She said, Jeff, I don't care about what they can see from Southern,
That was me.
because that monument sign is in the wrong place. It should be at their driveway. And I said to myself, I'm not so smart, but she is. And she's right, in my opinion. But
Yeah, once.
so one of the issues is, and I actually learned today that they may be coming in for a site plan amendment to do just that. One of the signage problems that you run into is when that sign is in the wrong location. And we'll see a little further along on the drive that there's some questions about a lot of the signs on Southern, and I'll go into, when we get to it, some of the discussions that was had by the committee with respect to rural vista guidelines. But once again, not making judgments right now, just seeing what is out there in the town. And just so you all can follow along as to where we went, we pulled out of here, took a look at those signs right across the street from us. And then we had to go to Boonies, not for lunch or drink, but because they were redoing their parking lot, and we had to get them some information on that. Then we went up the Southern Corridor, went to Groves of Town Center and the Public Shopping Center, drove around through the college, went up B Road to North Road, then came back down D, went up and down Okeechobee, and then we came back via Folsom and collecting Canal. So this is not the entire town. I think it is a pretty good representation of the type of signs we have in town. But just so that's where we're cruising.
Was this intended as a temporary sign?
This one,
Serenity Grove, yeah,
Serenity Grove is a temporary sign.
yeah.
Now, the question on grand opening signs and those kind of things, which once again, we're not gonna ask you to answer tonight. But during the course of this evaluation is whether we should allow them, what structurally they should be, where they should be located, how long they should be there, and how often they should be there. Because I'm going to spend a little time on this. That property, my recommendation to the committee will be, when we get into those kind of discussions, that property owner should make an application,
For a monument sign.
and maybe not, it doesn't have to be an exorbitant fee or anything like that, or an exorbitant process, to let us know that, yes, I'm going to have a grand opening, assuming that you all recommend and the council says, yeah, that's an okay thing. But there should be a time limitation on it. They need to notify us about it because it's the property that should have the limit on the number of grand openings. If it shouldn't necessarily be, so up to you. If I have 15 new tenants, do each of them get a grand opening? And does that mean that there's grand opening signs out there for 150 days out of the year? Those kind of things. Not gonna get there tonight, just wanted, to your point, that is a temporary, that should be a temporary sign. Right now, I will tell you, that couple of things. There has not, we're gonna see a lot of signs. We have gotten, as a town staff, very, very few complaints about signs over the years. Most of the complaints that we do have gotten about signs have had to do with political signage, and not all of the signage that you see. Typically, this town's practice has been code enforcement is done on a complaint basis. So it's not that our code enforcement officers are blind and don't see anything, but we don't get complaints. And so where there may be variations to the current code, we have not been aggressive or done a sweep on those kind of things. My recommendation, once again, is if we're going to go through this effort and we're going to get a sign code that works for the town, and we're going to have amortization as to how long non-conforming signs can be there and everything, one of the recommendations is going to be, don't waste that effort by requiring complaints. This should be proactive code enforcement. Otherwise, you will end up in a situation where if you will see, people will put signs all over the place.
Well, maybe some of that could be alleviated if we put into the code that your temporary sign is good from the 1st to the end of the month. And at that point, then Public Works goes through and picks them all up.
Well,
And then you can, and you can ask for an extension or something. That way, then you're not running all over town trying to figure out which signs are no longer.
Or they can end up in the canals, and that was always the problem with
yeah,
so many of the
it
political
starts
ones, but
off-
yeah.
it starts off with having a.
I don't mean the
pollution.
political, I don't mean
But
political
any of
sign.
them could be become pollution.
But if there's a
just fly off in the wind.
Right, no, I understand. So, but if there's a time limit set that but Public Works can go out on a timely basis instead of every day they have to go check for signs that are past their shelf life, then, I mean, that's going to be an incredible amount of road trips. How many square miles are we? 33, something like 12? What are we?
Yeah.
A lot. You
And the-
know, the 2-week ones, the 15th, they get picked up. The 1-month ones on the 30th, they get picked up. So,
I see it, this is a huge opportunity for us
Yes,
to kind of set our,
mhm.
put our stakes in the ground. because,
Exactly.
I mean, this is all about branding. Signage is about, it reflects the town of Loxahatchee Groves. So I'm all for this,
For sure.
okay.
for sure.
Let's, if we could move on, because I don't want to spend
Right.
too much time on all of these, just trying to show you. Page 7, what this is, this sign is not in there for the turning vehicles or the stop for pedestrians. What we have there, I believe it's referred to as a snipe sign, is well water expert service and installation. Somebody attached that sign to the base, the bigger sign, and that little thing is for advertising for that business there. But that's a snipe sign.
Aren't they not
Page 7.
permitted at this point?
Right here at the
they would be.
at the corner.
Right?
typically.
No, they're not. But this is just, once again, this is informing you of what's out there. We're
Right.
not at this, I'm not asking you good or bad on all of that, and just want to let you know that there's there,
So
that
that's
it's
the,
there. If you go to page 8, we're now at, we're now at, the shopping center
Yeah.
that has,
Oh.
boonies in it.
Global Mart.
Yeah.
It's even more interesting
and
inside.
what I'm showing you here, this is an example of window signage.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah. Page 9. There's more window signage.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Now, at some point in time, not at this moment, we're gonna ask whether or not you want to limit window signage, or whether you think this is not quite enough. Page 10 is more window signage. I briefly, when we go to page 11, we see an example of under the canopy sign, and Karen will correct me when I don't get the correct terminology there. And in the window, you see a fat guy, so that's not a sign, that's my reflection.
know.
And this is also an example of what appears to be a business where the sign remains, but the business does not.
But so I'm sorry, so so you're considering hanging something behind the fascia of a porch, a canopy sign?
It's under typically.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Under canopy sign.
okay,
And then we have,
okay.
They're more like this.
When we-
Okay.
You can go the other way.
yeah, when we go to the 12th slide. Sammy, you're not keeping up. You're still on number 6. I've been yelling numbers too. Next one. There one. All right. Now he's with us. All right. And I say everything to that man with a lot of love and affection. He's beautiful.
Right.
Sure.
So you've got, there's an example of under the canopy signs, there. And then we went back for a second, on page 13. And you'll see very functional, needed, products. And there's signs on those. There are signs on those. And that's kind of a different kind of thing. Then we'll go to page 14. And here you have an example,
A parapet.
of what I'm showing you here is there's not a master sign plan
Clearly.
at this particular facility. I love a lot of the businesses in there, and this is not to pick on anybody or anything like that. This is just to point out that you've got a variety of signs there.
But it would
You-
also seem like to me if we did something that was more uniform, like the under canopy signs that were hanging from a chain or whatever, when something does need repair or is being replaced by another, it would be so much easier for them to change than having to hire some contractor to,
But I also
Well-
think you said the right word there, uniform.
yeah,
There
uniform.
needs to be some rhyme, you know,
And so you do have, there's an example
makes
of
sense.
a cloth under canopy sign, whether it's a banner or not, I'm not sure. You also see signs on the veterinary clinic parking only. When you go to page 15. Right, and this is right in front of the business, we once again have a sign advertising that particular business. Now, I'm not sure how effective that sign is, but it is out there.
Did you say 15?
15,
Yeah.
yeah, that's 15.
Yeah.
Well, and this particular building, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't have, or does it? Does it have a monument out front?
We'll
It
get
does?
there.
Oh, oh, sorry. It does, doesn't it?
16, page 16. Once again, this is some other business in there, and the principal reason that I took this is to show
It's
you
just so ugly.
that those are wall signs. They're not roof signs because they don't go above the parapet, but it's also a question as to, you know, that's an example of what happens when you don't have a master sign plan. All right. We'll now go to
Oh, boy.
page 17, and once again, I'm not making any judgment about
No, it's
about
all over the
these-
place.
these signs or anything like that. What you have here is an example of a fence sign. That arguably is a temporary sign, and it's, you know, it's made out of a cloth or a plastic material. There may be some maintenance questions with respect to it. And the other reason that I got it up there is, you know whose fence that is?
Yours.
The town of Loxahatchee Grove. It's the back of our fence. I was like, okay. Yeah. And then we go around to page 18. And we got a fantastic mechanic there. And you see the signage associated with that.
Some of the stuff like his sign is, you really don't see that from the street. You have to go around the back of that building to see that.
That's right. And that's one of the questions to keep in the back of your mind, and we'll go over it with some other
How
examples and
visible it is from the main. street.
where the visibility is. And, you know, one of the things we will ask you when we get there, not tonight necessarily, if you have a situation where the property is completely buffered from its neighbors and the right of way with respect to the interior of the signs, do we care?
Hmm.
And we'll get to what I think is a decent example of that later on.
I think we have to care no matter where the sign is, because it gives the town a certain look.
We'll just keep on going, because I don't want to spoil the surprise.
The journey, all right.
19 is just once again the back of the building, and you see there you see address signs, and then when you go to page 20, you'll actually see what you would think of as more than an address sign, an identification sign. And you know that.
I mean,
I-
these
I'll-
pictures
I'll-
raise more questions. than
I'll say
answers.
that identifying the business in the back, that kind of makes sense to me.
It does for pickup and delivery and
yeah.
stuff like that, 100%, but
Alright.
nobody else usually goes.
Right.
British Feed, you go in and out that door as a patron, but none of those other ones you do.
Right.
Hmm,
But,
I've been through this
um,
door many times.
Right.
and so then we are now up to page 21.
Oh, look, it's blank.
Yes, that's a bit sad, isn't it? You're not
Kinda
much
weird.
happening here.
Well, you know, I heard I think there's a reason for that, but yeah, there you have. This is not really a monument sign. I think it's more along the lines of a pole sign or something like that. But it's
Pole sign.
a big tall sign. So that's the plaza sign that they have out there.
How old is that thing? Do you know? When it went up?
Probably old enough to be non-conforming at this moment. I don't know. I started living out in this area in 1986. And I want to say
It was there.
it was, I think
Vintage.
the plaza was there before I came.
Sammy's laughing. I don't think he was born then.
Well, I
I guarantee he wasn't, because I've got children that are much older than him that, you know.
I don't hate the Palms West sign itself because it is a bit nostalgic and it does have a shout out to our old town. But
I
the,
thi-
the construction and the placement, I think it is, I don't know, but yeah,
It's something to consider.
it is something to consider.
It's a memorable sign. And then we moved to, the more, what you would call the front, at least, the portion of the plaza that is facing, southern. And you can see they're doing a beautiful job of, putting in a new parking surface there. And once again, you've got a variety of signage there. And that's on page 22, yeah. And then when we go to page 23, you see a variety of signage. There's several signs advertising some of my favorite things. And you also, what I want to point out is you see that big red chair?
Yeah,
That's a sign
I know it is.
under our definition.
It surely is.
Yeah.
Whether or not we want to deal with that or not,
What does
That-
that have to do with Loxahatchee Groves?
it is,
It's a picture spot.
it
Is that what it
is, yeah.
Okay.
That's something that y'all will need to consider. I'm not advocating one way or another. I want you to understand that, because when we go to page 24, we see a variety of signs. You'll see some flags there. You'll see the American flag, but you'll also see some other flags that are definitely more from an advertising perspective. And you'll see something that somebody would say is definitely artwork, but at the same time, that's also a sign under our code. And so whether we want to regulate those kinds, that line between art and signage is going to be a question for you all to consider.
Well, and the chalkboard sandwich sign is also, but is that, I mean, you're counting that as a temporary sign as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as artwork and murals go, for me personally, as long as there aren't any words on it, or if the words are something like Loxahatchee Groves or Welcome to Florida, the Sunshine State, something like that, I personally don't.
Yeah.
As long as it's,
Approval.
case by case or something like that, as long as it's not a giant phallic symbol, or- I mean, there's got to be obscenity sort
You
of,
mean like the Capitol building in Tallahassee?
or the Washington Monument in DC, but I was just a little more lifelike or graphic, might have been what I was
Obvious.
thinking. Obvious would have
I
been.
just want to, I don't know, have you all, the Capitol building in Tallahassee, it is a relatively tall rectangular building. It sits up on a hill, and there are two domes immediately adjacent to it. And my grandchildren recently, my grandsons, recently took a visit up there, and one of them said, is that a, and
Building?
and then there was a mention of, balls. And then my 7-year-old said, I got to share this with you because it does go. My 7-year-old grandson says, wow, they really missed an opportunity. They should have put a fountain up there.
That's so cute. Wow.
So,
Oh, my goodness.
anyway, back to the signs and we're on 25. And that is I guess a pole sign. And it also has some changeable copy up on the top with the time and the temperature. And there is also another freestanding sign that is a little less permanent. Um,
Hey, Karen, can I ask you a question really quickly? On these other sign codes that you did, did these towns like especially where that it's like the major thoroughfare that you know, once you know you're entering the town, did they require like the same font and the same, you know what I mean? Because that would sort of string the town together a little bit. I mean, like, quite honestly, I really like that, the old bank sign. I do. But wouldn't it be cool if you knew it was in Loxahatchee Groves because it all used, I don't know, Western, you know, but not like boonies, whatever that is, the
They
May West or.
did, they more regulated, for example, some of the jurisdictions didn't allow pole signs. They only
Okay.
wanted monument signs. They usually do it with materials,
Okay,
you know, so like, I worked in Parkland, so if you go to Parkland, you'll notice brick. You know you're in it as soon as you hit a brick sign or a brick building.
okay,
So they did it along those lines. Some jurisdictions do it by restriction of like coloring.
okay,
So like, North Palm didn't want bright colors. You could do something like that, but you try not to,
Limit
restrict
them.
too much because everybody has their own personality.
sure,
It's more, but again, appropriate for like a corridor. Like, I don't know whether, you know, that type of approach would be throughout the entire town, but certainly on a corridor might
along
make
Southern
sense.
Boulevard, okay,
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
if you go to page 26, there's an example of an A-frame sign. This, I'm not sure whether this is an on-premise sign or an off-premise sign. It's right on the boundary of the property. There's the snipe sign. You know, and then you've got this directional sign that is really, really confusing to me. Cause I don't know whether it's right, left, or straight ahead, but somewhere around.
Bit curvy, isn't it?
Now, but those signs exist. And then if we go to page 27, we've got,
Did they just find two poles and tack up a board in between them? Is that how?
Yeah,
kind of looks like.
the old telephone pole.
yeah, those have been there for a while. You know, I think that's a real sign design that, was probably approved at one point in time. And you'll also see the sign, what is that called? It's a
It's a feather,
yes, yeah,
feather.
feather flag, you know, a little banner thing
Oh,
right
those
there.
You know, those can all just go right away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have those. And then there's when you go to page 28, you see a more comprehensive view of that sign. Once again, you've got window signage, you've got wall signage, you've got, you know, you've got the supermarket. I'm not sure whether the vape and smoke is a separate location, but you got that going on. Next, when you go to page 29, you've got what I find to be an interesting sign. It's a wall sign, but it's also, it looks to me like
Temporary.
it's canvas, and it's not, you know, it's not what you would think of necessarily as a permanent sign. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is on this sign, I think it's a very good example. And I won't send you back to the definition. But when you're looking at sign face, all of that black area is included in the sign face area. It's not just the copy, prime storage, and the little PS, but because that black area sets it off from the building, all of that would be included in the sign face area. Why is sign face area important? Because most of the time when you're talking about the the size of a sign that's acceptable. You know, there's gonna be a height. There might be some width, but there also is the sign face area. And so in that case, it's all the area in black, not just the lettering. I thought that was a good example of that. When you go to page 30, you're at the gas station. And once again, you've got you know, several of their services advertised. Gas stations, you know, typically it's the one place that we allow changeable copy and pricing, because that's very important to all of us. It generally, that's kind of unique, or it was kind of unique. We'll go on to more modern signage that you have, where, you know, you've got electronic signs and they totally change the picture. You know, they tell me not only do I want a hamburger, but, you know, a second later, I do want my French fries, and they show me the picture of them, all in electronic. Or, you know, if I'm driving around, they tell me that I once again did not win the lotto. But the good news is there's more of an opportunity tomorrow. On page 31, you'll see a temporary sign that is attached to the fence. And you know, that's why that one is there, just to show you that, you know, in the background, you've got that. Page 32, once again, you get the typical the gas station. You'll see window signs. You'll see that there's a 3-pack of something that is now available. Temporary sign. Moving on to page 33, we're now in the newly developed area, and we're at the car wash. There's a lot of signage there. All of it relevant and important information, you know, because I need to know where I can go, and that's where I pay, those kind of things. When you go to page 34, you've got examples of window signs there. Once again, you know, in some ways completely full. And
I thought our sign code at the moment said that you couldn't completely block,
I
put
am
up any.
Yeah,
sign that you can't then see through the window.
there. I'm going to show you signs that may not comply with
Okay.
our code. Once
Oh,
again,
okay.
this is not from a code enforcement standpoint,
I
just to
gotcha,
show
okay.
you what's out there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And then when
That was
we
egregious.
come back, that's going to be one of those questions.
But I think this is when if those signs weren't there, you'd be looking at cars going through the car wash and the equipment. That's all you would see through those windows.
I don't know if you would see that. I think that's
That's
might be an
office on that
office
side.
area. Now, when you go to the next pages 35 and 36,
Wow.
that may be what you're referring to,
Yes.
except guess what? There's no window.
Oh, that's.
That's supposed to be an architectural feature showing a little depth in the building. So not really, it's a question, can you have a window sign when there's no window?
There's no window.
I,
Pretty creative.
you know,
Because they've exceeded their sign allowance.
well,
They're-
once again, we're not making judgments, and that these folks did go through an approval process, and I honestly do not know whether they are compliant or non-compliant with their approved sign code at this time. This was really just to show you
Yeah,
what is existing out right now. I want to make sure that I repeat what I said before, which is we haven't gotten a complaint that I can recall, that I know of, in code enforcement about those things. Now, I'm not inviting complaints at this time.
Well,
I'm just saying that we have not got a complaint.
And I just opened Pandora's box.
I was gonna say, wait till next week.
But I also feel like for some, even me having sat on ULDC for, the last couple of weeks. I would know as a as a resident, that this type of stuff was a complaint based, that I could complain, that I could go, I mean, I would say, oh my God, I really hate the neon colors in Loxahatchee Grove. But would I know to go and file a formal complaint and continually drive?
That's one of the reasons when we get done with this
Okay.
endeavor, I am going to make the recommendation to anybody who wants to hear it or doesn't want to hear it. If you're going to go through all this effort with the sign code is not something that should be complaint driven.
No.
It needs to be able for the staff to notice it. That doesn't mean they're going to notice everything or
Right.
get everything. But if you don't have enforcement, you will have non-compliance because apparently these signs work.
Well, right, and I mean, like, obviously code enforcement's gonna notice the big stuff, and the big stuff are the biggest offenders, or possibly.
Yeah. Then getting to 33, no, I'm sorry, 36. You've got their wall sign. When you get to, I'm on 38, I guess now, Sammy. Yeah, next one. Yeah,
Or they start running together with all the pink and blue.
yeah, this is a temporary sign, directional in nature. 39, you've got more directional signs. And thematically, one of the things you can say about this is this signage, at least for this particular location, there's a consistency of the coloration and all the rest of it. So they probably took that into account when they were looking at things. We now move on to the next business, and we weren't trying to pick on anybody or anything like that. We were just driving around and going to the next place. You see there a directional sign to tell you where the drive-through is. For some reason, there was an apparent need, and I don't know whether what the top of this sign originally was, that pole that you see there. And I'm on page 41 right now. But that's a snipe sign on that pole. And apparently the drive-through and the curbside pickup are not necessarily the same things.
Curd.
Curd.
Curves.
But they're all in
Yes.
the same direction.
Somebody.
I know.
somebody-
42.
The curd.
Yeah.
I've done it on purpose.
It's in the
40
poutine.
42, we have another sign, and then 43, we've got a vehicle that's used as a sign.
Wow.
And that is interior to their parking lot. On 44, you've got, once again, that changeable copy sign in front. What I can promise you is
Going
that
to be gone.
I was not going to the bathroom at that moment.
I know everybody was thinking that, right? I was like, what are you doing up there?
And so you've got the monuments, you've got a monument sign. Once again, this monument sign is not near a driveway. Then you have the Culver sign on
The for sale trailer.
the trailer that is there.
That's out there with a for sale sign. That's been
Yeah.
sitting in their parking lot for months.
The next
Wow.
page is 45. and you see the
Hello.
wall sign up there. You also see one of those drive-through changeable, freestanding changeable copy signs, but a whole lot of other little temporary signs around there. And they're just trying to make Jeff hungry. And then on 46, you'll see that this is to remind Jeff that there was even more stuff, and I'm gonna have to loop around again. Cause more good stuff here.
Cheese curds.
I was just there to look at it. And see what it
And that's
was.
where the curd stop is. And then 47, this is just to show you that there are signs on trucks and vehicles. We're not suggesting that we begin to regulate that, but this is, there's lots of signage out there that are mobile signs. Going on to page
But-
48.
Ugh.
This is one of Joe's favorite signs. And it is directional, and this was put up by the developer. You do say that there's one last chance to remind Jeff that, wow, I could have had Wisconsin cheese sauce on
Right
my
as,
fries.
right as you run into a car because you can't see the stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's perfect. Yeah. 49, we've got Aldi's, and Aldi's from a signage standpoint is pretty clean. You see that informational sign on 49. You see their wall signs up there, and you can see that there's two of them.
I
You go
think
to-
that's the correct word, clean.
Mhm.
We
It's clean. for sure.
51, you see AutoZone. They've got some window signage, talking about that they are now open and other things. We then go out on 52, you've got the AutoZone sign there. Once again, not immediate to the driveway
No.
and
In the berm.
in the berm, and this is something that we had talked about with respect to the Rural Vista guidelines, and that one of the things that the committee came up with is we wanted more
Dense.
dense barrier and a longer barrier. And whether this signage is, once that sawgrass grows up a little bit,
It's gone.
what are we gonna be able to see there? That's just an observation. If I were the owner, I would have ripped out that sawgrass and put it back a little bit. All right. We once again on page 53, we got another sign of Aldi's. 54, this is there because we found this sign in the shrubbery. It is a reminder that all of us, even ones that are put out by the town of Loxahatchee Groves, we need to pick up our signage
Mhm.
because it is well beyond February 4th.
Jeff was having a great time out there.
Page 55, once again, there is a monument sign that is close to the drive aisle there. You do see some temporary signage there. When you go to Wawa on page 56, you see signage. That's actually that's looking out towards Southern.
On the berm.
57, this is gas stations, and you'll see that they will, around the pumps, they will try to maximize signage. 58, it's another snipe sign. We're still at Wawa's on page 59. You'll see that the gas station pump has become a sign and the communication device and all kinds of things. It's just acknowledging that. Page 61, more signage along in the area. Then you've got the Wawa itself on 62. We went over to the public shopping center. 63 shows Cricket. which shows outside display with signage, A-frame, window signage there in addition to the wall sign.
Does outside display take away from the maximum depth of a porch? Right, like, don't we have maximums and minimums for,
There is a question there's a question and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, and you'll see it in another another few pictures as to what the extent of our outside display space is allowed to be. I don't know whether that's compliant or not compliant. It would, like I said, taken not for code enforcement purposes, but to show signage,
So they typically look at ADA
you know.
space, enough for a wheelchair to go by. It's not, then we can't do it.
64, you've got directional signage there. 65, you've got a directory sign. In 66, you see a real estate sign for rent sign.
with a snake sign on it?
That's arguably temporary. But very often those are left up a long time. 67 is another monument sign. 68, that sign might have, it might be because of the tornado that it looks like that, or it might really supposed to be looking like that. I'm not really sure. 69, we've got another gas station. 70 more gas stations. 71, another 7-Eleven gas station, just to show I wasn't picking on the Shell or the Wawa.
375 was today, diesel?
No, that was last week.
Okay.
It's gone down a little
Wait
bit.
a minute.
At least when I was driving earlier, it did. 72, once again, you show frontage and you see variety of signage out there. 73, this is there to show that our garbage containers have signs on them. You may wonder where the doors are.
Yes, where are they?
I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see in a little bit an example of what can be done when the doors are there. This is one of my personal favorites. These are what I call bollard signs. They are temporary signs in front of Publix. This is on page 74.
Yeah, where's the screen?
All Publixes that I know of have these. I don't think I've never seen a sign code that really addresses whether or not these things are legal.
Let's invent one.
Yes.
Well, let's take a position.
Let's take a position.
Yeah.
75, that's really that Publix liquor sign it's a separate tenant. It's not part of the Publix itself. 76 is another shot of the signage. It's really, to me, more interesting from the backdrop, and you see the sign on one of the out parcels. You can see the Dunkin' Donuts over there. And this is an example, I think, of that when you look at 77, you do have a master sign plan for this area, but they're not exactly alike. They don't have to be uniform, and I'd call it a black and white theme, but those are not the same, but they are all part of a master sign plan. And then when you go to 78, you see some deviation to that, because that's probably a copyrighted sign, but you'll also see that another one of the feather signs, some A-frames. Then you get down to on page 79, you're at Tractor Supply. I'm not sure whether I skipped over the public sign, but the public sign itself to give you an idea on scale. This Tractor Supply sign face is just under 100 feet. That's
100
a,
square feet or 100?
that's 100 square feet. The Publix sign, big Publix sign, that's 120 square feet. Under our current sign code, they had to get variances, but that's not to say right or wrong on it. That's to give you an idea on scale. So when we come back and we start talking about the size of signs, that'll give you an idea. And you can make your own determination as to whether that's the appropriate size or not. Once again, you've got a bunch of A-frames out there. You've got a lot of product on or near the sidewalk. I'm moving to page 80. You'll see more outdoor signage there and outdoor display. 81, more of the same, and you see the variety of products that they have. Once again, I don't think we've ever gotten a complaint about any of this. 82, you will once again see it. Now, when we get to 83, when you put the dumpster, the dumpster doors up, the gates, they become very effective
Any
marketing.
flat
And
surface.
this actually, unlike the Culvers, which Jeff had to go, oh my gosh, I missed some food. This is very conveniently located. I can see this from the drive-through changeable copy freestanding sign. We've got on 84, as you can see, we're at Wendy's. We've got the temporary banner up there on page 85.
Why do they have an umbrella under the porch?
That is bizarre.
We on 86, you will see Palm Beach State College's sign that is on Southern. I want to tell you first, we do not have the power to regulate these signs. That being said, this is an electronic sign. So you got changeable copy on a continuing, potentially constant basis. That sign is pretty large. Personally, I think it looks pretty good. When you get back on 87, that is their monument sign that is located on B Road. And I have the same feelings about that sign. So take a look at it as part of your homework. When we get to page 88, we've got an example of farm signs. Red Clove Farm and Nursery. And not necessarily
In that order.
need to be regulated. Page 89, you've got another High Point Farm sign. And then on 90, you've got another little logo for High Point Farm. Once again, I'm not sure whether those signs went through the permit process or whether somebody asserted that they were farm signs. We take a liberal view on farm signs, and we would include as a part of the farm sign the name of the sign. I could make an argument that that's not really necessarily what the state law says, but here we look at that as an acceptable sign. This is,
Why would that not be acceptable?
well, if you read the state, if you go to the definition,
Of a farm sign?
Yeah,
Oh,
farm sign
farm sign.
typically talks about product, selling the product or identifying the business.
So it would say equine facility.
a sign located on lands used for bona fide agricultural purposes that is erected, used, or maintained on a farm as defined in Florida statutes. by the owner or lessee of such farm and relates solely to farm produce, merchandise, or services sold, produced, manufactured, or furnished on such farm in accordance with section 604.50. Our
Services sold, so if they are selling stalls, I'm talking about my barn, because I know my sign's gonna be on
Yeah.
here somewhere. And it's gonna, so was it gonna say Bellwether Farm Equestrian Facility, because I don't rent stalls.
we'll see shortly.
But what I mean, it seriously, because
Yeah.
what's the answer for these people? Because
No.
in the,
What I'm telling you is,
Agricultural
what I'm
portion of
telling you is the way we interpret it
right,
is that the name of the farm, you can get a permit for it, but you don't have to.
I'll use an example. Example would be, say your family owns the land. Okay, so maybe it's ABC family. That's all you have on the top, but the farm service is Mecca Farms.
Yeah,
So the question is whether that name,
so,
because it's not associated with a product or with the actual farm services. But Joe, what we're saying is we interpret it as including it. We're just letting you know that
Mhm.
interpretation could be up to you guys
Mhm.
eventually, if that is something we want to address.
well, I'm kind of just trying to jump the gun a little bit, because I imagine there's gonna be a lot of those throughout town. There's not,
Could be.
I
There
know
are.
mine and High Points aren't the only ones, they just happen to be on B Road.
Right.
And I'm sure people want their signs, I certainly do, but I also don't want to be non-conforming, so if
we
before we
consider-
can get an answer, you know what I'm saying, make it
our current interpretation, and I think the interpretation that probably will.
for going forward,
Going forward is, that's a farm sign.
okay,
Uh,
because it doesn't,
But it doesn't prevent, it's like anything else, that is exempt from permitting. It doesn't mean you can't take it through the permitting process.
got it. I mean, because I get that a nursery is gonna say what they're selling, they
Right.
want to get you in there, but most equestrian facilities aren't selling anything, are they?
Well, then they
No, but
usually
they
have
provide
stalls for
services.
rent
Yeah.
outside,
But
don't
they
they?
provide services.
Which is
Yeah.
another.
They provide services.
Not,
Yeah.
I don't,
Why? You're renting
Boarding
stalls?
Nope.
services.
No training.
nope. I rent my facility,
Yeah.
the entire facility.
Yeah.
A dry stall, they do everything.
Yeah.
So it's a farm, that's all it is.
Because the people that you're leasing to are operating.
do it
as a
all.
farm.
They operate
Yeah,
it
That's
for
the, so. 91, we've got,
Wow.
I think that's a ministry, sign that is out there. 92, we have some examples of farm signs.
Hmm.
And then 93, this is there, for the for sale sign in the back. And my understanding is, I don't think Bellwether Farms is, for sale. I don't believe, I think.
Everything's for sale.
Yeah, but I understood that I think that. The
That's the
reason I
back
put this
property.
sign in there is that's an easement road, and that sign is actually located, or it's intended for property behind. So it is on an easement that they have an interest in, but not on the property. Just something to keep in mind when we talk about temporary signs, real estate signs, those kind of things.
That's on my property,
Yes, and it makes sense.
right?
But it benefits the property behind you, as I think.
Well, that's his right of way, right?
Yes,
That's what you're
Oh.
saying.
that's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Yeah.
That's,
I agree with
I'm saying. I
Helps
think
him.
we should allow that.
Oh, okay.
I'm not,
Not giving an opinion.
I think it makes sense, but 94, this is another,
Beautiful sign.
this is another nice sign, arguably a farm sign. And then we get to 95, this is on the corner of B and Okeechobee. These signs, there's some fence signs on there, there's some freestanding signs. And just wanted to take a look at it. This is this is to this next sign on 96. Hey, y'all, I'm not sure that business is still there.
Timothy.
Um, and I would stand to be corrected, but, we're not sure that, that, I'm not sure that business is still operating out there.
I don't think it is.
98, that's the sign for Good Earth Farm. This one is there because this is an off-premise sign. And it goes to something that some folks in the agritourism world would like is off-premise directional signs of some sort. But this sign is actually located right in front of the Googe property. Just a little east of the intersection. And then when you get to 99, you once again, you've got a sign. It's near the entrance of that business. It's technically off premises because that's in the middle of the canal right away. And when we get to agritourism, that has been a request that they would like wayfinding signs, those kind of things, so that people can be directed to their businesses. Page 100, here is a classic temporary farm sign, talking about sheep for sale. 101, we got jackfruit for sale. On 102, this is a grand entrance sign for a farm. It would be something that we would probably consider part of the farm fence and a farm sign. And I think we should consider whether or not you could have a similar sign even if you weren't a farm, because it's an entrance to a beautiful 5-acre piece of property, maybe a 10-acre piece of property. The fact that you don't want to farm on it, how is this kind of sign not in keeping with Loxahatchee Groves? Even if it was just, Jeff's Lazy Ranch, but it wasn't really a ranch.
Right.
See
what's wrong with that.
103 shows a directional sign to a stable. 104 shows another. It's similar kind of concept as the farm sign. I'm not sure whether this is a farm property. I didn't look it up, but that's there. 105. You have an example of a for sale sign that is raised up a little bit. Another way to advertise with the post and those kind of stuff, those kind of things, instead of just sticking it in the ground. And I'm going to show you. You'll see a variety of for sale signs here, which are temporary signs. 105 is another nursery sign, and then you'll see a temporary sign underneath there. 107, this is there because you see the Rivendell South flag, and the flag post being used as a sign. 108, you've got more farm signs. You've also got, the flag there. 109, once again, you have
So a Florida flag and a US flag is a sign.
That's a question as to whether or not you want to regulate them as such.
Some towns include it, some don't.
Mike,
I can see a flag saying buy our peanuts as a sign, but
well, the classic examples of American signs being used for as signage and advertising, car dealerships. I've seen car dealerships that have 50 American flags out in front. I have seen car dealerships with signs that are about the size of this room.
oh, okay.
And I'm not suggesting that we there, but there are times when people get into the idea of, wait, that's a little bit far. If you ever go to the polo fields
You got
over on
50 flags.
uh-huh.
Yeah, Lakewood.
Remember, you can't do content based.
Right.
So you can't say it's okay for an American flag, but it's not okay for a stable flag. So that's why you have to look at it and determine, do you want to regulate it? If you do want to regulate it, do you regulate it as a sign? Do you regulate it just as a flag outside of the sign? So there's a whole bit different ways of looking at it.
And one of the interesting, that particular polo field over in Wellington that we're talking about. The origin, at least of some of their wealth was
Making,
Potemkin Chevrolet.
oh, thought you were gonna say making
The-
flags.
No,
That would have made
but
more
Potemkin,
sense.
so that's why I go like, oh yeah, that's, that was
But you
typical
can
usage.
regulate the size of the flag or the
Yes.
numbers of
Yes.
flags.
Yes.
The height of the flag, the height of the flagpole, yes.
Yeah. The proximity to each other and those kind of things. Anyway, 109, another entrance sign to a farm. 110, that's another sign, once again to a farm.
Is that an off-premise sign? Or is that house on that nursery? That's weird.
I'm not, I think that is,
Looks like it's on their
I
property.
think it's part of it, yeah. 111, it's there to show you a two-face sign. Or a dual-face sign. 112, once again, it's a farm sign, but it's a fence sign that's temporary in nature. 113, another nursery sign. 114, M&M Tropicals. One of the reasons that I'm going through so many of these is these are all in AR. They're all in the AR. 115, this is getting back out to Okeechobee. Yeah, 116, you'll see a monument sign on Okeechobee for the school. 117, you'll see the Macy Farm sign. That's actually taken because I think that's in the right of way.
Yeah.
But it's in Palm Beach County's right of way. And then you have an interesting, once again, this is part of Macy Farm and is now hiring
Been there
a
forever.
farm sign or not on that fence. Interesting question. The wholesale stuff, that definitely is. Moving down a little farther to A Road, and you have a mural. That's an existing mural. And then on page 120, you've got the garden stop. Once again, farm signs. But I didn't take, it was the one example on there. They had a one of those Gumbies that float in the wind-blown signs. And just an example of a sign. Came to Big Dog Rescue, located on Okeechobee. They have a sign there. And then we drove into Big Dog Ranch. And I think for the most part, the signs that I'm going to show you in here, you can't see from the right of way or the other property. There's a lot of little signage here. There's a mural. I just, we took a picture of the bus. There is, within there is signs for each and every one of the buildings, even though it's all part of one nonprofit business. On page 124 and 125, you'll see slightly different houses and those kind of things. When you go
But at
back
least
there,
it's consistent. I mean.
there's a lot of signage, and I want you guys to drive by from the roadway and drive into it because you can. And if you want to go pet a dog, that's perfectly okay too. But see if you can see that from somebody else's property. And that goes to our earlier discussion. Should we or shouldn't we care? Not making a judgment on that. I want you to, as part of your homework, drive by that and see it. 126, this is another example of a for sale sign. Obviously considerably different than some of the others that we have seen. But drive by and see what you think about
Is that
it.
on Okeechobee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then 127, you've got an agritourism place there. And they've got a temporary,
Consider Wedding Chapel agro-tourism.
huh? Yeah, agritourism, when you go to the agritourism site at the state, you'll see weddings is one of the things that is highlighted. I went to my niece was married up in Martin County on a farm. But really cool barn that they have converted. 128, you see the Palm Beach County monument sign. 129, you'll see another type of for sale sign. Once again, these are bigger than 3 feet, 3 square feet.
Also, too, there's a lighting element to a lot of these. That's got to be looked at. Okay.
Yeah.
And why those colors for the fire rescue? Were they different colors to start with? Or was it always orange and not orange?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
130, on page 130, you see a future home. It's a temporary sign. People can argue as to how long those kind of signs should be there. I'm not picking on that
7 days.
development, but you also go to, this sign has been there for a while, and once again, looking at maintenance of it. On 131, you'll see a pretty big temporary sign, advertising a big event coming up at the church.
Is that sign down now?
Not Easter yet.
No, it's April 12th.
April 12th was the Easter egg hunt, but Easter is next week.
They change those signs out
1920.
regularly.
Do they?
And 133, we're coming up to another Macy Farm. It's not the same location, it's the opposite end. This sign is on page 134, that's farther back. And as it's on the opposite side. That's not the roadway, that's the sidewalk there. 135. Once again, looking at the sign and. We can talk about maintenance of.
That used
those
to be
signs.
such a beautiful facade.
And it's so funny because
Well, they cut
Yeah.
down
it's
every
pretty
single tree.
ironic because it's
Um,
not much of a landscape there.
Well, it
130
used to be, it was beautiful, and you can see the chopped trees, they're just.
Yeah, they've had plans to replant them.
Mm.
136,
Hmm.
you've got sign associated with Ruth's Pantry, which I think is associated with the Palms West church there. 137, you've got the church sign itself. And once again, structurally, you'll notice what I notice. There's a lot of signs that are wooden signs.
Yep.
Yeah.
In
Um,
Hurricane Valley.
The 130, 138, you've got some farm signs there. 139, you've got another example of temporary signs at a church, and in the background, you can see a changeable copy. Monument sign. 140.
Now, is that because the changeable copy sign is actually where it's supposed to be? Because that's that's the county's right of way, and these two are stuck out over the driveway where they're probably not really supposed to be? Okay,
I
Yeah.
mean, this one looks very close to the fire. Yeah,
Yeah.
the water.
Um, but once again, they're temporary signs in
they can
in
come.
nature, and
Where's-
140.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Where is that? I've never seen that sign. Is it brand spanking new?
It is relatively new, yes. And it's there just because it was the next one in line, and the next picture,
It's like a
Um,
hospital sign.
I offer,
Doesn't match the building either.
No, no.
you notice that,
No, absolutely, because it looks
you
like.
know, and that's one of the
Sticks
things,
out like a sore thumb.
but that's one of the things that we don't
Have,
require, we should require.
Yes.
yes, for sure.
Right, that's why it's there, I think the sign's very nice, but. 142, just the next one, along there, and what you have here is, most of these properties are actually, I think, currently zoned AR.
The churches?
Yeah, we should probably
they're-
put them
I think
into
they're
institutional.
But
If you
think
look
that
at our zoning map, they're
they're still in the AR.
still in AR, I think. But we're not gonna go back there because I am
No.
way beyond my time
Yep.
frame here. We come to 143, which is Red Barn. And Red Barn's actually it's a commercial establishment. It is zoned, I want to say it's like a MUPD.
Oh, right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Anyway, we've got a number of signs at Red Barn there. That's their wall sign, obviously. That's their monument sign. We've got this interesting firewood sign. Yeah. Yeah, this is sign on their back building.
Come on now.
Once again, this is, I'm not doing this for advertising. What I'm saying is there's another wall sign, and really for instructional in nature. Different use, but a wall sign. Coming around the corner, we've got the various Loxahatchee irrigation signs there. We've got the Sherwin-Williams sign out front, and the out front on
That's
the
been there forever.
irrigation.
And how is-
Well, the for sale signs.
You've got a another for sale sign that's across the
Sherwin-Williams
way.
sign needs paint.
Well, yeah. And then when you get to, I'm up to page 150 and you see the Sherwin-Williams wall signs there. And then parked in their parking lot is a truck with a Sherwin-Williams sign. Once again, not to, it's there to let you know that this signage and how trucks can become signage. And that would be probably very appropriate for it to be parking there. 152, you've got an approved site plan on a commercial site.
That has been there for a very long time.
So
Yes, and this is there to once again show maintenance of signs as much as anything else.
Yep.
We come down along Folsom. And these series of signs are once again to acknowledge that in our AR, we do have businesses that are not. They're not farm businesses. They do need some signage. Fence signage may or may not be appropriate, but you know, one could make an argument that it's okay, but and I think there's some maintenance issues there, and I don't know whether the maintenance issues have to do with whether or not these are non-conforming signs. That's one of the problems when if you have non-conforming signs, and as I said, I'm not necessarily sure that those are non-conforming. But if you do have non-conforming signs, very often it is a disincentive for people to upgrade their signs, because as soon as you get into that, they go, oh, now you got to adhere to all the rules. Well, that costs more money and all those kind of things, but wouldn't it be, you know, a good idea to have non-conforming signs that are maintained? And then one of the things that you can do is drive by and say, okay, well, how many signs are appropriate? And I'm up to page 158.
maintenance.
And this is a Town of Loxahatchee Grove sign.
Seen better days.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, gotta make sure that that's within our right of way. But that's something that whether or not we make the town adhere to the sign code, Karen and I would advocate, no, we're exempt, because we have different needs from a sign code, but that's one of the things that you will be asked to consider. And this is kind of a reminder that maybe we need to step our signage game up for that. And I don't know, do we need to, we don't have all those meetings anymore.
Well, just out of a pride thing.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Not that anybody's
I
holding
agree
your
with
feet to
that.
the fire to
But I'm
fix
saying,
it,
town council meeting, that's erroneous information at
but.
present. It may be coming back and be, you know, the future is the past, but
Right, I gotcha.
we need to check those numbers and all those kind of things. 159, we've got this is coming back down Collecting Canal. We've got a summer riding camp that's being advertised with a temporary sign. You'll see a bunch of sponsor signs out here. Another I'm on 161 for sale sign. And in contrast to 162, a different kind of for sale sign. And then we come to 163, and that's a sign. The Wellington jump sign is a sign. And 164, that was the sign you saw back at the earlier, but it wasn't really visible as to exactly the nature of it. And it's on the animal hospital, and that's back out on site. Okay. Taking up a lot of your time. appreciate the indulgence. I'm not sure if we want to, how long you want to go, discussing things. There's other folks that need to explain what they brought. I really went through this with the idea of getting you to think about signs, notice signs, drive around, and come back with an idea as to what you think is appropriate. Not asking you to make that determination tonight. I want you to think about the standards. I think this community is different than a lot of communities. And so signage that works in West Palm might not work here. Signage that works here wouldn't work in West Palm. And I'm gonna be quiet, I think, for a while, because I have talked for a long time. I will say that we need your help. I think one of the things we need to consider is how do we deal with temporary signage?
Mhm.
And I'm not gonna go back over them. You've heard about that. I think initially, rather than focusing on the commercial areas, I'm gonna ask you to focus on the AR and recognizing that there are businesses, whether they be farm businesses or otherwise. Think about whether or not some of our residential, we've got home-based business, residential enterprises, those kind of things. Does it make sense or not make sense for them to have signage right now? Not supposed to have signage out front. I want you to think about whether or not some of the signage that, for example, the entranceway sign, does that need to be confined to farms, or should non-farmers that own an equivalent amount of property, should they be able to have that kind of signage? How many temporary signs should there be? Recognizing that one of the things that go together, at least in my experience, is that real estate signs lead to garage sales at some point in time. And if you were only allowed to have one sign, how do you sell your property and have the garage sale the week or the month before and adhere to the sign code? So think about those kind of things. Think about how many times you should be able to have those temporary events and signage, and how long signage should be allowed to be out there. But what I'd like for next time, and I don't know if we want to wait a month to have another meeting or have it somewhat sooner. But think about the AR first, rather than focus on the commercial for your homework assignment.
Well, do you guys want to discuss having a second meeting a month? Do you think,
Okay with meeting more often?
I am too, if we can get more done and get more to the council. Okay. Karen would like us to meet every week.
Well,
Liz Karen,
I think for this project,
we could do,
it does make some sense.
Yeah.
'Cause, next time I'm gonna shut up and listen, hopefully.
I mean, maybe if we can set a time as well. I'm happy to meet weekly, but I can't meet for 3 hours weekly.
Right. No, I don't
So-
think, because you're gonna need
Mhm.
some time to go out.
Yeah.
So I don't think weekly is gonna be an appropriate time frame.
right,
But maybe, 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how much time, and maybe, Jeff, if you could maybe give them like a checklist that you want.
homework
them to go
assignment.
through on, like the AR, so
Yeah.
they know what they're looking at, so when
That-
they come back in. Does
that was
make
gonna be
sense?
my next,
Okay.
like, just a little homework assignment, no,
Yeah.
so that, I mean, because AR is a big, that's a
Chunk.
big
Big
chunk, that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
So, concentrate on farm signs, nursery signs, residential
The
signs.
categories.
Farm-
Like,
I
Yeah.
thought we
Yeah.
couldn't regulate.
Farm signs you can't regulate.
Yeah.
So
So-
concentrate on what we want them to look like.
So.
If
yeah,
there's going to be a code throughout town that says it has to be built out of,
Look.
or
yeah.
no.
With farm signs, that's gonna be kind of tough, but think about appropriate materials. Think about whether fence signs make sense. Most jurisdictions won't have them, but most jurisdictions don't have the size of properties that we have out here and the extent of fence that we have. And the other factor in that, how limited our rights of way are. Putting drive around and say, wow, is it a good idea to have signs, temporary or otherwise, in between the fence and the right of way? Think about those things. We are different. And the amount of signs and the size of those temporary signs. So go look at the real estate signs and, see how big they have to be effective. How, where does your sensibility get to the point where that's too big, given the scale and context of the property? It's very different, and we should probably in the AR consider whether smaller lots, which we do have in this town, the quarter acres, they do exist, should have a different signage regulation than the 5 and the 10 acre.
So if placement's gonna be a question, then, and it's 5 feet from the property line or 5 feet from the setback, I don't remember which exactly it was you had written in there. Doesn't that preclude, doesn't that eliminate a lot of those signs down Okeechobee, period, unless it's hanging on a fence, right? I mean, some of the
Okeechobee-
code that's gonna go in, not to do with the sign, will already set up some of what kind of sign they can have, won't it? Will it not? As far as placement,
Somewhat, I mean, Okeechobee, actually, there's a lot of right of way that the county has there.
so they're just putting those up at their own risk. The county could come by and take them down anytime they want.
Yeah,
Okay,
and the question is whether or not we want to pursue the county and encourage them to do that. That's a question administratively and also for you all to think about. Yeah.
well, then our goal is to try to give them somewhere else, some other way to advertise. I mean, because we don't want our little town businesses not to have a way of being known where they are.
Yeah.
But it should be at least safety wise.
And there's
And-
and there's businesses in other areas, and you all know where the agritourism businesses are. You also can think about, I know that they have an interest in having wayfaring signs or something saying, here's how you get to all the way up here above North Road and all those kind of things. And there is a mentality that, wait,
Cheap, yes.
you just put you just put it on your phone. But anyway, those are
Okay.
things for you to consider. I don't want to short circuit the work that you both have done. You wanna talk
Another
about-
time, no, another time is fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine with me too. So are we good? Do I, looking like we want to wrap it up. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
One
Oh.
quick,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
that's what I
my
was gonna
bad.
say. We will,
the what?
We
we,
had to know.
is there a day other than Monday that works for all of you?
Monday?
Isn't this Monday?
Saturday's good.
No, it's not.
No, it's difficult.
2 weeks would be the 28th.
We have a fact meeting that day. That's scheduled.
In here, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
Tuesdays also work.
Huh?
You asked, is there another day?
Yes.
Tuesday,
Tuesday works.
earlier on in the week.
well, other than the times that there's a town hall meeting,
Mhm.
right?
That's.
So
true.
Yeah,
this-
that's what we're gonna have to.
So this
Coordinate that.
so Tuesday would be the other day, you mean, for
Yeah.
everybody?
not particularly good, but it's not horrible.
What's the better day for you?
Well, Mondays is good, that's.
Well,
but
it's,
just for the
we,
sake of meeting.
we have other committees that meet on Mondays, so finding Mondays is gonna be more difficult than finding some other days, and we're not, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this information back, and we're gonna look at our calendars and all those kind of things and get
Okay.
in touch with you, but
How's
if
Wednesday?
Thursdays don't work at all, I don't wanna suggest that day. If Tuesday is the next best day, that gives us something to work on when we take.
What about Wednesday? Wednesdays? So it wouldn't interfere with the council meetings on Tuesdays?
Yeah, didn't we used to meet on Wednesday? I feel like we did. That's stuck in my head,
I
so,
know Thursday I have LGLA.
right, so, yeah, Wednesday's better for you?
Wednesday'd be better than Tuesday. Yeah.
Then
Okay,
let's
Wednesday.
try
So we'll
for,
confirm
Okay.
back with you
Beautiful.
that Wednesday is reserved. for
Okay.
that Time.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll look for it to be, uh, 10 days to 2 weeks or something
Yeah.
along those lines. What we will,
and
try
is
to do-
6 o'clock always the time? Does that give you enough time to take a break and get out of here and come back? Or is there,
Day. Earlier for us, better. 'cause
Yeah.
we just
is
say
that
we
the
don't go
earliest you
anywhere.
can do it as 6?
we
Or is
can,
that too
we can
early?
do it at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
We're
that
easy,
help or
we're
hurt?
here.
yeah.
Oh, I'll be all right.
That'd be good.
4 o'clock.
Depends on the day, but yeah. Yeah, well, I could
Right.
probably
Right.
do 4 o'clock. Feed the
Well,
horses.
Right.
Right.
We'll check, no, we
We-
will,
Check
we
with
will
Ryan.
obviously check with
Check with,
Ryan. So
Yeah,
but I
feed-
think
you're
we're all
not
pretty
adverse
good at,
to earlier.
yeah,
And what we're gonna probably do next time is have you guys tell us more. We're hopefully not gonna give you a whole bunch of new paper to look at.
Yeah,
And, you know, you can take these homes and study and say, what was he talking about?
Sounds good. Now let's motion to adjourn.
now it's a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Hi.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Good job.
Meeting adjourned.
Captain, I feel as though I'm, in some spaceship up here.
Oh, yeah.